Hello everyone, and welcome to this session of the RevLabs. I'm Thibaut, I will be your host. I give everybody some time to streaming, join us. I can see there's already about 40 of us here. Today we'll be talking about revenue estimates. So as usual, it's really a session that's built around best practices. We really want to share with you best practices, and we have here people who know what they're talking about when it comes to revenue estimates. But as usual as well, we want to hear from you. So as you getting settled into this call, this webinar, as usual, feel free, for example, to let us know where you are. There's a comment section. You can tell us where you are. This again helps us maybe see that maybe you, so it's good to know to see you're there. Also helps us maybe adapt to the markets you have, right? So right now you can already use the comment section, tell us where you are. That's again is helping us adapt to who you are, where you are. We also have a Q&A section, and the Q&A section, feel free to ask any questions you may have. We have here David. We don't see him. He will be answering questions, helping us answer questions. We'll take questions in the end, but we really want to make it interactive and something useful to every of you. All right, Puerto Rico, London, properties in Spain. Hello, Deborah. Deb, Colorado, Portugal, Mexico. Okay, Pakistan, Myrtle Beach. Okay. So let me get started now because I think there's about more than 70 people here. As usual, I have just a few slides. More people, more Portugal, Houston. I see a couple of names we know here. Hello, everyone. And Quebec. So a couple of slides, not too many, just to give you the agenda basically of today, and then go straight into the questions to the speakers. Let me share my screen right now. All right. All right. As I said, the topic today is really around revenue estimates, how we calculate them, what you use them for, and also how do you use them to talk about expectations of revenues for a property, whether you have to talk with your sales team, for example, or you have to talk with the homeowner. Most of you attending this call are property managers or revenue managers, so feel free to have your best practices. All right, so as I said, I'm Thibaut. I'm the head of product marketing at PriceLabs. I'm also the founder of a short-term rental news website called Rental Scale Up. As I said, we have David in the comments section. David, you want to quickly tell us a bit more about you? If you want to.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. I'm David. I'm a solutions consultant here at PriceLabs. Primarily work with customers in the Western US that have about 50 properties or more, and excited to be here. You'll see me answering questions and chiming in on chat.
Thank you, David. That's so important to have your support here. I think most of you attending know PriceLabs. You know, we're a data company. We do revenue management, dynamic pricing. Quickly underscore here is that we do revenue management, dynamic pricing, but we also have data products, right? You may know us for market dashboards, a product, and we launched recently Revenue Estimator Pro. That's also why clearly we're talking about revenue estimates, because we also want to share experience. I know we also have here helping with the comments Arpit. He's the product manager who designed the product, created the product here, Revenue Estimator Pro. That's the point I wanted to make about the company, right? We know us for revenue management, but obviously we also have data solutions. Now we also have Randy, Jasper, and Becca joining us today. I will let each of you introduce yourselves. Randy, do you want to get started? Tell us more about yourself.
Sure, and thank you very much. My name is Randy Jensen. I am based here in Arizona in the United States. My background is vacation rental, corporate housing, corporate furnished housing, and the airlines.
So it's a lot of revenue management background, I'm guessing here, right? So even with airlines, you were working on revenue management?
Yeah, we had a system called Pros. It didn't start off that way. 36 years ago, we did it on paper, and it was a little bit of a learning curve, but it was actually quite amazing to go through the industry. This was after deregulation, so it was a lot of fun. Still is.
That's such a wealth and breadth of experience. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure we can learn a lot from how you do things. On the other side of the spectrum, I would say we have Jasper. Jasper, do you want to introduce yourself?
What's up, everybody? Yeah, my name is Jasper Ribbers. I am based in San Diego, originally from the Netherlands. Got into short-term rentals in 2012. I'm the host of a podcast, Get Paid for Your Pet, which I started 10 years ago. And I also co-founded FreeWild, a hospitality company out of California, and a educational company, Overnight Success, where we have revenue management service, we have a consultancy service, and we have a revenue management course.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jasper. Indeed, it's great to see again the progress, and I think that you guys have done. You're very active in the industry, and now you really also pushing into property management and revenue management. So it's really great to have your perspective here on how you're doing things. Last not least, Becca, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Thibaut. Hey, everyone. My name's Becca. I'm based out of Charleston, South Carolina. Before joining the PriceLabs team, I was a property manager. I worked everything from the front desk all the way up to a director position managing one of our offices. I joined PriceLabs almost 3 years ago now, and I manage our US solutions team and work with larger customers, 100+ listings, mostly all across the US.
Thank you so much. So, and Becca, obviously you have an experience as well, probably creating revenue estimates. Well, I know you do. That's going to be interesting as well from you. As you can see below the slides, this session is being recorded. So what's going to happen is that after a couple of hours, let's say after the session, you will be getting the video of this and any maybe document or references we're going to be mentioning. For example, a link to the Revenue Estimator Pro tool, for example, or anything that could be useful. So yes, we're recording this session. No worries about it. And also we're taking your questions. If some questions are unanswered during the questions, we'll get back to you with the answers. So today, as I said, we'll talk about revenue estimates, setting revenue expectations with homeowners. We'll be talking about the main metrics, tools and techniques, how to pick, from how to pick the right comparable listings to having to do a lot of estimates fast, and talking to homeowners, right? Shipping expectations. That's really what we're about. And that's it for the slides. Let's just get started with the conversation. Let me just try to get back into fold. Boom, in Zoom. All right. I will start asking the first question, basically, maybe to you, Randy. When it comes to revenue estimates, in your experience, why do we need to create them in industry? Why do we even need to create these revenue estimates?
It's a great question that we all have to keep in the back of our minds. There's the big asset all of our management companies has, and that's our owners and the properties that we manage. And from my personal view, we have to be able to show an owner a realistic and articulate method to produce a projection. They have to be confident in us. Some of the properties that we all manage are worth millions, and to show a reasonable and achievable revenue projection is absolutely of utmost importance.
And would you say achievable? What would be achievable here in your own words?
Well, we have no control of what's going on in the economy. We have no control of all of the things that are going on there. So we have to it's like a budget, or it's like, how's your stock portfolio going to do the next 2 years? It's a best guesstimate, if you will. And if I project a property to do $85,000, but I know that, boy, there's a couple properties maybe in the area that might do 70, or there is an anomaly over here that might be able to do 100, I would want to have that little bit of a variance. And I personally can complicate things even more by, if I'm looking at a location that might be for corporate, that if we have a good corporate opportunity, I may be a little bit ambitious knowing that we're going to go after corporate. And if I'm looking at a couple comp sets and I'm looking at their calendar real quick and I see that their weekdays are all vacant, well, they're not going after corporate. So that might give me a little bit more room to be a little ambitious on the projection side, knowing that maybe my competitor in the market, or if I know the competitor, and I do know this in a few markets, they don't bother with corporate. So I'm going to be able to hedge a little bit on the optimistic side. But at the end of the day, it's the communication of where your information and why you came up with a projection to an owner or to somebody in sales that's critical.
That's a really great definition on how you use revenue estimates here. Jasper, in your own business, how is it? At what point, where do you need to create these kind of estimates? What for?
Yeah, I think there's several reasons why it's important to set estimates, and not only setting your estimate, but also reviewing your results and compare them to your estimates. Because I think number one, it's very important to develop the skill set. It takes time and experience before you become really good at like making those estimates. And as you know, as Randy mentioned, if you're managing for other people, it's really important to give them a realistic estimate. And number two, also, if you invest into properties or if you're in master leasing, right? I mean, you make better decisions if you can create a more accurate estimate. So I think that's one part, is just becoming an expert revenue estimator, if you will. But number two, I think there's also a lot to be learned about the market and about your own units and your marketing as well. Because when you set revenue targets and then you reflect back and you look at the actual results and you compare that, you'll often find that there might be a flaw in your marketing. Maybe your listing isn't as good as it could be, right? If one unit underperforms compared to your revenue estimate. On the other side, if you end up making a lot more than you were estimating, then you got to ask yourself the question like, hey, why was my estimate off, right? And you might find out, you know, certain pieces of information about a market. So, you know, I think those are the two most important aspects of having this consistent practice of setting targets, reviewing your targets, seeing where you're off, learning from it, and you know, learning about your markets, about your portfolio, and also just learning the skill set of setting accurate estimates.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're going also from where basically having maybe a new property, having some kind of estimates, to having this sort of kind of hygiene, basically going back to it and see how you've been faring. That's interesting things you're bringing here. Becca, in your own experience, again, when did you have to create estimates, or what did you see with the PriceLabs customers, for example?
Yeah, well, in my experience as a property manager, as a director of an office, I primarily was making revenue estimates for owners that were potentially going to sign on to our program. Also working sometimes with investors that already had maybe a home or two on our program, and then we're thinking about buying another one. But I really liked what Jasper said about making better decisions. Sometimes a revenue estimate is like the first interaction that a potential homeowner is going to have with your company and your brand. And you want to approach that interaction with data and make sure that sort of that first impression is also lasting. You know, you can give them a really high estimate, but then you're going to actually sign them on, and your property management team is going to have to sort of live up to that expectation. So you want to set realistic expectations, and you want to set the tone that you are the professional that they want to work with, and you actually are using data and helping them and guiding them in making those decisions for the business aspect of the home that they're listing with you.
Yeah, I like this idea already of being able to talk to homeowners, because indeed it's also a trust factor, and door for a very same discussion we'll be having. We'll talk about that probably more towards the end of this session, but it is very important. So we talk about like why would we create it. I'm also curious in the chat and the comment section if there's anybody has any other reasons to create revenue estimates. For example, I know that while we were working on creating the product, we came across realtors. Sometimes either realtors themselves need to create these estimates, or as a property manager who has a partnership with a local realtor, we send each other leads. Need to give them sometimes such revenue estimates, right? So sometimes very concrete usage we have, and that's also sometimes creating volume issue. Oh wow, I have to create yet more revenue estimates, even just for a partner, I would say. But that's crucial for what we have to do. Anybody else again in the comment section maybe has reasons for which they are creating revenue estimates that could be interesting to know about? Feel free to leave a comment. Ali tells us that she's using this to secure financing and acquisitions. Maybe talking to a bank, something like this. I think Jasper, that's probably a topic you're familiar with, right? It comes to talking with the investors for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we currently work with investors to acquire properties, right? So obviously revenue estimates are really, really important for the investor. And not just giving them a number, okay, also really showing them like, what is your process, right? And showing them like being very transparent as to how did you get to those estimate, right? They want to know that you're not just putting a number out of thin air, right? They want to know that you have a sophisticated like system and process in place to come up with those expectations. So that's something that I would recommend as well for everybody here is, don't just toss a number at your client or your investor, or whoever you're working with, but really like show them your process behind it. Because I think that will also build what you mentioned, Thibaut. I think that transparency will build more trust as well.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a good point. As also quickly as well, we have Dwayne tells us that whenever they want to enter a new market, they may want to do this as well. As Joao said, as well as Becca said, giving projections to users.
I'd like to just comment. Jasper mentioned the word expectations, and I think that's a word that's got to be in every conversation, especially if you happen to, maybe an owner wants to purchase a property and his expectation is over time that money's going to go towards paying down his asset, or if a person wants to just break even and let the property go up in value, that's a great goal. But I've also had owners come and say, I'd like to make money on top of my costs. And this is the truth. They said they wanted to put their kid through college. Yeah. And it was not an expectation that would ever, depending on the college they went to, but the expectations part of the conversation with owners is critical. And I think the projections are able to be then reviewed to manage that expectation to see if it's achievable.
I really like this, what you're saying, Randy, here, because it also comes down, it's not just a listing, there's a family of people behind this. It's really important. And there's somebody sharing in the comments that they're going through a divorce and need to prove the value of the house. So it's indeed, right? So sometimes very important to understand who you're talking to, what the homeowner wants, and what's happening here. So now let's change a bit aside. So we know why we want to do this, but how do we create these estimates? And again, Randy here, can you tell us what metrics do you cut? What tools or techniques do you use to come up with these estimates?
That's it's a great question. I have a tendency to overanalyze everything. So I use a lot of information and I search and I sort and I download. Primarily my go-to place is PriceLabs, the dashboard. It's just a wealth of information to go in and get all the information available within the marketplace. Understanding the areas that you're looking is also obviously critical. I have a report which I had sent you where I can use all the information that I am able to extract from PriceLabs, but I also use key data information as well too. I don't believe you can come up with a very accurate anything if it's just one source of data. You need to look at this, and you need to look at that listing, you need to look at this source of information, you need to look at you know, this year and last year, and you have to put it all together. It's a big puzzle is all it is. And you got to have a lot of pieces to come up with the end result. And that's primarily the sources and the way that I put it together.
Do you want some point to show the document you sent me, or what do you think is useful here to share with the audience?
I mean, you can share it, sure. I mean, if you wanted to take a look at, if you wanted to share anything, but I have a report that I will take information. Obviously, we have just your basic metrics of occupancy and rate. And I also give myself some seasonality information. And this is something that I think that's important. I'm a more conservative projection creation person. You know, revenue management is not a difficult topic. It really isn't, but we can complicate the heck out of it. We can make it really complicated. But for example, 2024 is an election year. There's wars going on. There's an economy. There's all kinds of things going on. I definitely would be more conservative in this type of an environment. In 2021, there was so much demand, we didn't know what to do with it. So then I can be a little bit, and something that I also do when I put out a projection, I let people know that are reading it, this is an estimate. And this is based on historical information. I can't predict 25 or 26. So just, this is the best information that the industry has. PriceLabs is a great source of information. And we let people know that it's no different than if I want to invest money in Tesla. Tesla's not going to guarantee that this is what the price is going to do in their stock. So it's kind of it's a moving dartboard. But all you can do with any estimate or any budget is do the best you can. This happens to be a file. If you go to like maybe the next tab or two.
Sure.
I don't care about 21. I don't care about 20. I don't even look at it anymore. I only look at the last couple years and I take a look at the market. This happens to be for a Gatlinburg market. And not only is this able to show me seasonality, and I can look at a couple years of data for both occupancy and rate. And then the bottom is 2024. And then I can kind of take a look at it. And this is, I think, so critical. So for example, in this market, I've had people tell me that July in Gatlinburg is pandemonium. There are people running in the streets that can't find places to live, yet it's only a 76% occupancy. It's strong, yeah, but be careful. People have in their mind that, oh, we can be crazy on pricing. Here is actual information. But then I also believe what's also important, go to the next tab. This kind of shows what's going on, and I think everybody is very aware of this. What happened in 23 compared to 22? What's happening in 24 compared to last year? I want to look at what's going on in the market. And I think we're seeing a softening of demand. I think people are not willing to pay what maybe they paid in the past. Well, that could be a thought. Well, this is actually numbers. This is showing that the ADR variance year over year is less than 22. So this is information. This is not theory. This is not an opinion. This is not an answer on a dartboard that we just threw at the wall. That's what we have to use.
That's great. And thank you so much for preparing this doc and sharing with us, because it's really helping people see how you do this. Jasper, on your side, what tools do you use, or techniques or metrics you look at?
Yeah, for sure. So I rely mostly on PriceLabs. I think the PriceLabs market dashboard has now has evolved in a way that it's pretty comprehensive. So I do agree with what Randy is saying. Like we should always look at different data sources, right? Because for example, in the market dashboard, right, we can get revenue estimates from PriceLabs, right? So that's a very important part of my research. Is I go into the market dashboard. I look at the map, I zoom in on the area where the home is that I'm analyzing. I look at the top 5 most similar properties in that small region. And then I create the comp set, and I base revenue targets off a couple comp sets, like a high tier comp set, like a mid tier comp set. And then I also look at the market average. And going back to somebody asked this question here, which I thought was a really good question. I think it was Michael saying that he takes the 50th percentile, right, of the market. So essentially the median estimate of the general market. I think that's a good number to include in your report. So when you talk to the homeowner, I can give a concrete example. Like, we're looking at managing a home in Lake Tahoe right now, 4-bedroom. And I know somebody's on the call here, Ellie, who's in that market. She's in our community, so she knows more about this. But yeah, 4-bedroom, right? What's the revenue estimate? Well, I know that the market average revenue is 90K. We can pull that from PriceLabs, really easy. Download that data. And then I look at a high tier comp set and a mid tier comp set, just the 5 properties that are most similar, top of the market, and then right below that. And then based on that, you know, I have 3 numbers now, and now I'm going to actually look into the actual listings, right? And I'm looking at the details of, like, okay, why is this property generating 20K more than another one, right? One thing I found out in Lake Tahoe is, like, if you have a lake view, that pretty much adds like 20, 30K to yearly revenue, right? And it's little things like that that really matter. So we can't just look at the aggregate data of, like, what's the median, what's the average. We really want to look at, like, those top performing properties that are similar to ours, and really understand, like, why are these doing so much revenue? Is that something that we could achieve with the home that we're looking at? Are there certain things, amenities, or is the location different, right? So I think the nitty-gritty research is really important to come up with those estimates. And then you can show the homeowner, you can show them those range, right? You could say, like, hey, I think we're going to be in the 120 to 160, depending on, obviously, market things that you can't control, like the market, the trends, everything. But given that range, and then you can give them the average number as well, right? You could say, like, hey, on average, a 4-bedroom does 90K. My estimate for you, because, you know, of our systems and our way of doing marketing and everything else, we believe that we can do 120 to 160, or maybe it's 100 to 140. So I think we can give them a little bit more context than just, like, you know, that one number.
Thank you, Jasper. I really like this idea and of going above one number. There's a question happening. Becca, I would love you to explain to us how you do this, and maybe how PriceLabs could help do this. And having in mind, indeed, it's just not one number. There will be several numbers we have, and then because somebody's saying in the Q&As as well, is that sometimes when I talk to homeowners, they have an ADR, a number in mind, right? And they would love to see how we can not just talk about ADR, but revenues. I guess, and there's a question around Estimator Pro I see as well here in the comments. So maybe it's a good segue to start showing indeed how we can help people have this conversation beyond just one number, which could be ADR.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, like, you know, as professionals in the industry, a lot of our job is educating the homeowners, because ADR is like this talked about number, but you might, if you're sticking to a really high ADR and the market just can't support it anymore, you're going to end up losing out. So you really do want to convince your owners that revenue, or even RevPAR, is the final focus. Sometimes RevPAR is a little bit harder to convey to homeowners, because you might be able to get a higher revenue number if you are a little bit more flexible on your ADR when the market's a little bit softer. So I'll actually, do you mind if I actually share the Revenue Estimator Pro just to kind of show everybody what it is? I'm not sure if everybody's seen it yet. Okay, I'm just going to do it because nobody's saying no.
Sorry, I was mute. I was like, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, of course. Okay, so here, let me just share my screen. So I did not have the Revenue Estimator Pro. Well, I guess nobody technically did because we just released it. But when I was a property manager, I would have loved to have had this. What I personally did is we also combined a couple of different data sources. So to get to the Revenue Estimator Pro, you're going to go to Market Research, go to Revenue Estimator, And then it's all right here. So what I did as a property manager is we looked at a little bit of market data. We actually used key data at that time, and market dashboards had just started. So I did use a little bit of market dashboards. And then we combined that with our own inventory. So we were a larger property manager in the space. So we did have a decent amount of data just from our own portfolio. And then we'd also take into account things like Randy was saying, like, how is the market doing year over year? But having the Revenue Estimator Pro is a really easy, quick way to get a really concise set of data. So I'm just going to put in, you know, a random address here, just to show you all how quick it really is. Do Charleston. I think this is 2943. So USA. And we'll say, let's look at a 3-bedroom in this area. We want USD. Continue. Oops. Well, so we've got our listing location here. It's going to load really quickly. So what PriceLabs does is we're going to look for all the similar size listings in your, again, sort of like a hyper local area. Of course, you can fine tune this during the next step, which is really nice. So we've got about 436 listings around here. It's going to open up that estimate right away. And then if it will load. Now we do have an option where you can download a PDF, but because I'm a big fan of, and I'm sure everybody else on this call is, of sort of combining and, you know, fine tuning your data sources. You can also download this into a CSV, put it into an Excel, and then maybe make some adjustments based on things like, one thing that I would think about is if you're doing a revenue estimate for a homeowner here in Charleston, it's a very seasonal market. If somebody's coming to me and wanting to sign their property with us in July, a lot of the high priced bookings that will come in July and August are typically made pretty far in advance. So you will want to make some adjustments just based on your local knowledge, like things like that. You can also filter and refine the comp set, which is so key because normally, and even with, you know, key data, they have an absolutely great tool. But we were sort of looking categorically at, you know, all 3 bedrooms or all 4 bedrooms in this really broad area. And we know that, you know, listings are actually very specific. They're all very unique. Want to come up with an estimate that's accurate, you're going to want to really fine tune the data that's actually coming into that estimate. So here I can use the lasso tool and say, I actually just want this downtown Charleston area. The other surrounding markets are going to perform a little bit differently, so we don't really want to pay attention to those. You can also use other advanced filters like review score. You know, if I know that my company maintains a 4.5 average review, I'll adjust this here, the number of reviews, I can adjust that a little bit. And then I'll also sometimes just use these other listing metrics to maybe get rid of some of the noisy data in the market. So if I have people that are, you know, sometimes I'll see the listed price as over $5,000 and I know that nobody in the market is actually listing at that, I'll maybe bring down the listed price to something a little bit more reasonable, assuming that those, you know, $5,000 a night listings are actually just like ghost listings in the market. Number of active nights. If I know that my homeowner is going to be, you know, renting full time, I'll bring this up a little bit, you know, see, you know, at least 300 active nights online. If I know that the homeowner isn't going to be renting a full year, you also want to keep that in mind. If they're only going to be renting, you know, 4 months out of the year, you don't want to give them an estimate for a full year, or maybe you can give them 2 estimates, one if they were to rent the full year, and then one if they were to rent, you know, based on their travel schedule or things like that. So you can edit all of this. I saw somebody in the comments talk about pet friendly. Pet friendly, at least in our market, is huge. We used to tell people that if you were planning on being pet friendly, you could charge like 10% more plus a pet fee. So I would definitely take a look at that. But once you've sort of fine-tuned this with all these filters, The other thing that I think that people need to pay more attention to is also the aesthetic. In the age of Airbnb, in the age of, Instagram and TikTok, you want to see if you're going to be attracting the same types of guests, right? And the same types of booking trends from those guests. So if you have your listing, which may be is a little bit long in the tooth, could maybe use like a kitchen renovation, maybe some new couches, or maybe you don't have that, but an owner's trying to rent that with you and they have these really high expectations of these like Instagrammable properties, you're probably not going to get the same dollar value out of those. So you can go through and actually click on each of these links and make sure that aesthetically we're sort of matching the expectations here. So this is obviously an absolutely beautiful home. Is this similar to the home that I will be listing? Because if it's not, then the data doesn't really support the estimate. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I've been sort of taking up the time here. Let me stop my screen.
And just to answer a question from Sabrina, she's saying, I'd love to be able to download this list of comps to a CSV file. So if you go in the market dashboard, you can actually do that. Once you have a comp set created, you can actually download, because I do that all the time, because then I don't have to put all the data in my Excel sheet. I just copy paste it from the PriceLabs download.
So what we have you here, and I will ask the same question to Randy later, is that we just seen with Becca how important it is to pick the right comparables, obviously, right? And Randy talked about, for example, corporate housing versus or corporate apartments or versus the rest. So how about yourself? You started talking about this, Jasper. So how do you pick the right comparables? Do you download and play with them? How do you make sure you're looking at the right things when you're going to be giving an estimate?
Yeah, it's pretty much what Becca was doing. Like once I have a list of the 5 most similar listings, I literally click on every single of the Airbnb listings. I zip through the photos, I look at the reviews, like why are people staying there? I'm trying to find clues as to why these properties, because I start with the highest performing, because I always want to know, like, okay, who's making the most? What can we learn from looking at those listings? And if they're comparable, of course, but I go through the reviews. I try to understand who are the people that are traveling, right? What are they talking about in the reviews? What do they value? So it's it takes some time, right, to do that. But if you do that consistently, like over time, you learn so much from looking at these listings and looking at those revenues and like making the estimate and then looking back and saying like, okay, how was I right? Was I wrong? Was I too high, too low? Even by looking at those top performing listings will give you inspiration on how to do a better job at your own marketing too, right? So there's a lot of benefits, from going through this process.
Thanks, Jasper. Same question to you, Randy, and adding 2 sub questions to it already. First question would be, we heard, for example, Jasper going through like really the listings to look, or Becca talking about the aesthetics, but what if I had to do 30 of those estimates per week, right? I talked about that. What if I have a half volume? How do you compromise between, let's say, being fast and being more accurate? And the second question to also for you, Randy, from we've seen from Justin, is asking basically, what do you do when there are not really that many comparables you can use, right? Let's imagine you really have a very unique property and you think, I don't have any enough comparables. What do you do in this case? Over to you, Randy.
Thank you. Great question. One of the things that I do, and it was in that report that I sent you yesterday, I will create a comp set for a given property, kind of like Becca was showing earlier. Then I would actually create that comp set. And again, like I told you earlier, I overanalyze everything. I will then go in and export that comp set into Excel. And I'd love to talk to you someday about how you guys sort them, because I'd love to rearrange the sort order and how they come out, because I resort that whole report. It's on the tab of the report that I sent you, but I want to first take a look at the properties that show that they're actually being managed. The dynamic pricing is actually being managed. If I've got a property in 30 or 40% below the market, but no one's looking at it, that doesn't help me. But like Jasper said, I'll go through each and every one of those comp set properties and I'll highlight them, or I'll make them red, or if it's a dual listing, then I know that something's going on there. I got to get that out of there. That's why I can't just look at what the report shows you in the PDF. Or if a property is blocked for the next 3 months because maybe the owner is going to sell it, it's going to show crazy revenue too. So you have to dig down to the level of the data to find out which properties you actually want to use. And then I start going in and I'll say, what's the average revenue and rate for the highly managed and maybe the midterm. So I take a look at all of that information, and it does take time. You had asked about if there's not a lot of comps, then you have to kind of just use your own knowledge of the market. If you're in a market like say Nashville, and somebody comes in and there's an anomaly property with 5 bedrooms, not really common in that market. That's when you just have to kind of really know what the market is, especially when for leisure, 5 demand may be in demand. Lots of people want leisure. That's great. But then you got to be real careful with that property because you don't have a lot of corporate demand for weekday. Who travels with that amount of numbers? So that's where, if you don't have the comps, you just have to know the market. The other thing that I do is I will take, and I have files of all the 2 bedrooms that I do projections for in Nashville. And a lot of times I'll use those reports and I'll have historical comp sets that I've already created in the past months that are all for 2 bedrooms that are on Music Row. Or I'll do 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms that over by Vanderbilt, which is a total different. You get leisure and business. So I will kind of have that information in my files to be able to go back on. So I can do these at a pace where I'm not starting fresh every single projection.
That's an incredible level of detail. Obviously, you have to get into, right, to build this. It's very, very interesting hearing this. And getting back to the question I had is then, how many of these can you do every week? I mean, I'm just talking through like, because I was talking earlier to a property manager and manager, and they have to do like 30 to 40 such estimates every week because they need to convince new homeowners or to work with realtors. In your case, Randy, how many, your company at Grand Welcome, right? How many do you guys, how many of them do you create every week, would you say, or every month? Just to have an idea of the volume.
That's a great question. And I would say it's a difficult one to answer. We do have a proprietary tool that our offices can do projections, kind of like a person in a market. It's easy data and it's simple data that can put in and do a very good projection. I will get a lot of projection requests. So if somebody in the market has an owner that has 5 properties, or there's some type of a reason that they want my opinion and they want my detail. But I can do 10 projections a week. I can do 60. I mean, it all depends. The other thing that I get asked for quite a bit, and it's quite actually easy to do. If I'm doing a projection for, let's say, owner has 4 different properties. I just had this the other day in the Smoky Mountains. They had 4 properties, and they were talking to our office about moving all of them over. So we did projections on all of them. But what I'm also asked to do from time to time is take apart the current management company's pricing strategy. So our salesperson can go to the owner and say, okay, these are our projections. This is what we see. But also, while we were looking, we noticed that you have, in your peak demand, you have people arriving on Saturdays, which shuts off Thursdays and Fridays, or your weekday pricing. So you're able to give an owner good information and good sourced information, but you're also able to say, did you know that you've already sold out your weekends in July? Or did you know the first 3 weeks after New Year's, the prices are way too high? Or that type of feedback sometimes our salespeople like to have, because it makes an owner think about how they're currently pricing and how they're managing their inventory.
Yeah, it also shows the knowledge that the company has, that you have over, on how the market works. It's so important to build trust and have this conversation. So Randy, again here, we talked about how it's important to find the right comparables. What else is standing? So that's important to have like an estimate that as accurate as possible. What else is standing between you and a perfect world revenue estimate?
It's just, like I said earlier, it's revenue management is pretty a simple process. But we have, unfortunately, we're not the hotel business, or we're not the airline business. I mean, airlines have data. It's fascinating, but they know how much demand 340 days an airplane has next year, down to the 3 or 4 seats. And you have companies like Marriott, they have data, and they have demand data, and demand data is what we don't unfortunately have in this industry. So what we can do as analysts and what we can do as companies is just take the best information that the industry has. And we're leap years behind the hotel business and nowhere near the airlines. And we can take information and present it in a way that makes sense to people, excluding people getting tied up about ADRs, and just say, this is the information that's available. This is what we have. This is the information we pay for. It's really good information, and make it presentable in a manner that people hopefully can make a rational decision, and then obviously gain your trust.
Thank you. Same question for you, Jasper. We talked about what else is preventing you, I mean, from having a perfect world as revenue estimates?
And what's preventing me from creating the perfect estimates? Crystal ball would be nice. Somebody in the comments mentioned, I think it's Sharia, asking about, macroeconomical factors and like floods and heat waves and things like that. I think one thing that we haven't talked about that is important is pacing. So before I make my revenue estimate, we go through this whole process, looking at the comps and looking at all this stuff. You come up with a range, and then you look at what do we know about the future, right? We can't predict the future, but we can adjust our estimate based on information that we already have, which is how much occupancy and how much RevPAR revenue is on the books already. PriceLabs has a functionality for that, pacing reports. I look at it every single day. I look at how much RevPAR is on the books for March, April, May, June, July. Further out, the numbers are usually too small to really, have a good estimate. But I look at like, how is that compared to last year, right? So if you estimate like based on the 12 previous months that you could do $100,000 with a certain property in revenue, but then you look at pacing and you're seeing that the market is actually 10-20% behind for the next couple months, then you probably have to lower that estimate a little bit, right? As far as like specific events, those are really hard to take into account. Like a strike, or like I don't know, an air, for example, we had in Colombia, I have a property, and like one of the airlines, they canceled a flight, like a very popular flight from the States. Right. So that means less Americans coming into Colombia that would rent my property. Right. Those are things that they're hard to predict, and they're also hard to estimate, like how much is that actually going to affect the performance. So I would say, if you know of certain things that are coming up, I would definitely mention it. If you're talking to the homeowner, I would tell them like, hey, listen, there's a chance that something's going to happen with the weather, the climate, or whatever it is. And just explain to them, like, obviously those estimates are going to be affected by that, but I don't necessarily like adjust my estimates based on those things, because it's just hard to predict, and it's the effect that it has is also really hard to predict.
Thanks, Jasper. How about you, Becca? I know we talked about obviously the tool that we have, PriceLabs, has data here. It's obviously historical data, right? We're looking at things. So it's also important because we talk about sometimes like projections versus forecasts versus estimates. What words are important here? And again, why are these words important, for example, when starting talking to homeowners about what they are looking at in the data?
I think it goes back to like the initial theme of this conversation that we started with is you're establishing trust. If this is the first conversation that you're having with them, you want them to feel informed. You want them to feel like they understand where these numbers are coming from. And you can give them the biggest number that you can come up with, or, manipulate the data to seem like a really big number. But in the end, you want them to understand. So with PriceLabs tool, we are using historic data. It is an estimate. It's not necessarily a projection. So I would recommend using multiple sources. And again, kind of going back to your question about accuracy versus time, you can dig into our market dashboards tool and really understand things about how the market is pacing. There are these two really great supply and demand charts where you can actually see the growth in the number of listings over time and the average number of bookings per listing. That's a really good one to understand sort of how healthy the market is. So you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out these other factors that are going to affect your projection. But then if you go in and you are starting to think about, the macroeconomic thing on the global scale and all the airlines and the weather, at some point, it's just not necessarily useful to put that much time into a single estimate. So having the conversation with the owners to establish, this is the data that's going into it. These are some other factors that might affect things. Again, I don't have that crystal ball. If anybody has one, like, feel free to start selling those. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I'll steal, there's a quote that Anurag, one of our co-founders, used in one of his recent presentations that really stood out to me. It's a quote from George Box, who's a statistician. All models are wrong, but some are useful. And hopefully our tools are useful to you, but you should still use those, like the innate market knowledge that you have as an operator and as an expert in your area.
Love that. Thank you, Becca, on this discussion with the trust of homeowners. How is it at Grand Railcon? Well, again, you create these estimates and then you have to share them with the homeowners. So how do you share them with homeowners first? And what happens, again, if the homeowner was expecting something bigger and the rest, what does your team do?
That's a great question, and I think one that everybody struggles with. We do our projections and we do a lot of detail throughout the system. Any of the people that I work with, I invite them. Call me, let's review any specific data, or there will be certain projections where I will tell them, call me before you present. There's something going on here, because sales and people in the markets may have perceptions about a given property or a given area. But if this particular property, for whatever reason, if there's something going on that I think will be valuable and helpful to somebody in sales, I will literally tell them, before you present, call me. I want you to see this, this, and this. But that's really the length of detail that we go through with them. When people or companies don't agree or don't understand or don't think the projection is what was in their mind, happens all the time. And I think a primary reason for that is when you take a look at what has been going on in the industry for the last 5 years. But then again, I also think people wonder what's going on with my financial portfolio. It's all the same. People have expectations. And the one thing that I always want to talk to the salespeople in the different markets about, when they're talking with companies or they're talking to individuals, it's so important for them to understand the goal of that person with the house. We talked about that earlier, but also I'm okay if you're an owner that wants to risk and go after high ADR, I'm okay with that. Fine. Sometimes it makes my life easier. However, don't tell me that you want ADR and I'm a high risk person and I'm willing to roll the dice to go after ADR, but don't call me in a month and say, why weren't we booked? You can't have it both ways. And that's why we've all had the conversations to try to get people to understand, you know, rate is important, obviously. I don't talk about RevPAR because a lot of the owners don't understand it. They're for whatever reason, there's a mental block. So I kind of leave RevPAR out. I like to talk revenue. And I've said this 1,000 times in 35 years. You can drive revenue through occupancy more times successfully. But if you want to be a risk taker, I'm okay with that. Then we document it and we go the risk route. If they just say, you know what, you got great information, I like the information, I'm going to put it in your hands, do the best that you can with it, then we're like happy and we can do just that.
I really like it because it's really also, it's standing behind your estimate, being open to feedback, but standing also behind your estimate and say, that's what it is. And if you want to do something different, it's okay, but we'll document it. And also we explain to you what may happen, right? You'll be a risk taker here. And I really like it. It's adult conversation, clearly, right?
Well, and one of the ways that you can do it, and it's not that you want to put it in their face, but if has anybody received a message from a homeowner that says we took this booking and it was low, and then you look at it and it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they booked the weekend, it's a 7-day. If you then go to PriceLabs and you go in there, you can say, well, that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday had a market occupancy of 30%. Well, yeah, that's going to bring your rate down. So with PriceLabs data, it's so easy to go back and show an owner, yeah, maybe you might want to keep that reservation, or maybe you should send the market coffee and a box of donuts because that's a good booking. It's a 7-day booking. And I've even gone so far when I've been upset about somebody saying it's not a good booking, go into LinkedIn and find out that that particular person who's booking a 6-day departing on Saturday works for Yeti in Austin, Texas, or he's a medical director at Mayo Clinic. Then all of a sudden people go, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, we're okay with that.
I love it. I always love it when we talk about homeowners or guests and how all this data behind the scenes, it's still talking about real people with, it's really love it. I love this industry. Jasper, how about you again? Maybe your particular situation, because maybe you have to share these estimates with, I don't know, investors, for example, or your business partner. Again, what happens when the expectations are not what they think they would like to see? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, we always ask our partner or homeowner first of like, hey, what's a win for you, right? Like, how much are you looking to make, right? Because when you know their expectations before you give them the estimate, that's very interesting information to have, right? So just asking them what their expectations are first. If their expectations are much higher than what you estimate, I think that's a very interesting situation because you might actually learn something from them, right? I mean, depending on the market, they might actually have some knowledge that you weren't aware of. So having that conversation of like, hey, before you give your estimate, you can tell them like, hey, I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about how you came to your expectation. Jump on a call and have them show you how they came up with it, right? And then just be as transparent as possible. Like I've been in situations where I would go on Zoom and literally just go through my process and do it together with the partner, right? Involve them in your process. And in my opinion, transparency is just the best way to go. If they have a very different estimate than you have, then there's a couple things going on. Either their process is not great, or you're missing something, right? That's possible too. So it's an interesting situation, and it's exciting because you might learn something new, right? So
I like this also sharing, involving people when they can. If it's especially a business partner, that makes sense. Becca, anything to add as we are approaching the end of the session on this?
I was going to say one thing. Oh, sorry.
Go.
I was going to say one thing from a question that was answered earlier, because I think this is pretty common, is what if you can't find any properties that are really similar to yours, right? I looked at like a 6-bedroom in the market one recently, and there was only one other 6-bedroom, right? And then it gets kind of tricky. So one thing that I do is I try to find like a market that's very similar and that has a lot of inventory, a lot of 6-bedrooms, right? And then you look at like how much premium does the 6-bedroom in that market gets over the other, over the 5-bedrooms, the 4-bedrooms, etc. And then that can help you to create a better estimate.
Yeah, that's interesting approach as well. Quickly, I'm looking last question, so I make sure to have a conclusion time. How do you set up the dashboard on Google Sheets? So again, question, Randy, we share with you, we share with everybody a Google Sheet that you had prepared. So again, what tools do you use to do this? You download from PriceLabs dashboard, you download data from other things?
I go into the dashboard, I pick room numbers, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. I do the area with the lasso, and then I'll have my list. And like Becca mentioned earlier, I only want to look at the properties that have been active X amount of days. I might want to remove long-term, and I basically click on all, select all, and then I stay taking properties away from it. Then I give it a name, I create that dashboard, and then I go in and I filter. I want to see listing type, occupancy, revenue, pool, spa, booking window, listing type, all of that. And then I export it pretty much for every single projection. I export that, and then that's where I go in, and I like my sorting better. So I sort it and I get rid of all the different information that I don't need. And I look at that, and I tell you what, it can either say, yep, what I'm looking at as a whole is great, or if not, then I can start getting into a little bit more detail. If you're doing a projection on a house that's going to be doing, $300,000-$400,000, you want to be really close.
Such a great session. We learned so much today, and Randy will take you on that sorting order thing. So
love to talk to you about that.
I know the product team is listening, is here in the call. So thank you so much, everybody, for the feedback. Quickly, for every speaker here, if people want to know more, about what you do or things, what is the best way to reach you? For example, Jasper, what's the best way to reach you if somebody wants to know more about what you do or talk with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can put my email address here in the chat, and then if anybody has any questions about revenue management, then happy to answer any questions people want to have.
Cool, thank you. How about you, Randy? Email or LinkedIn? What's the best way to
email? Well, however you want, but it's randy.jensen@grandwelcome.com. Yeah, LinkedIn's available. We're all pretty easy to find, I would believe.
Thank you so much. And Becca, if people have questions for PriceLabs, what should they do?
Yeah, so we're pretty easy to access. If you're a PriceLabs customer, you should see a little bubble in the lower right-hand corner. You can email us or chat our team directly from there. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'm on, the social media. But yeah, our team is here to help. So any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Becca, Jasper, and Randy, for speaking today. Thank you for
Thank you.
We're over time. There's still more than 80 people. Thank you so much. I think it was really so many insights. So once again, yes, this has been recorded. You'll get an email with a recording, any documents or maybe the contacts where you may need. And we also write a takeaway article. So this insight we share today are really also accessible for you in writing, because it depends on your style. You want to listen to or read things. Whatever you need to do a better job, we're here for. All right. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great day or great evening wherever you are. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.